You know, it's funny how some moments, no matter how many years go by, they stick with you. Like a movie playing in your head, over and over. I've been teaching P for most of my life. I've seen a lot. Kids grow up, trends change, new sports come in, old ones fade out. But this one day, this one particular afternoon, well, I'll never forget it. Not because it was some grand victory or a big game. No, quite the opposite. It was almost a disaster. And the craziest thing? It started out like any other day, a simple indoor soccer game, right before the winter break. Oh man, just thinking about it now still gives me goosebumps. The gym smelled like floor polish, and that mix of excitement and chaos you only get when a bunch of 7th graders know they're just a few hours away from freedom. You know the vibe, bouncing off the walls, loud voices echoing, sneakers squeaking on the court. I was 38 back then, about 15 years into teaching, but I'd seen it all. Thought I had control of the room. And hey, maybe I was a little too relaxed that day too. It was supposed to be just a fun, no pressure class. But man, things can turn fast when you let your guard down. Real fast. Now, I'm not gonna spoil the whole story just yet, but let's just say, that day, I almost lost a student. Right there, in the gym. I can still see his face, hear the sounds, and honestly, that moment changed me. It taught me something that no textbook, no training, no coaching seminar had ever drilled into me. And crazy enough, it was that kid, a 12-year-old, who ended up teaching me one of the biggest lessons of my career. So stick with me on this one. Trust me, this isn't just another teacher story. It's about how even the most ordinary day can flip on you in a second, and how sometimes the student ends up teaching the teacher. By the way, if you've ever been in a situation where things spiraled out of control when you least expected, or if you're a teacher, coach, parent, honestly, anyone who works with kids, I'd love to hear your stories too. Go ahead, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and hey, if this kind of real talk is your thing, consider subscribing. I've got plenty more where this came from. But alright, let me take you back to that cold December afternoon. So, a little bit about me, just so you know who's talking to you. I've been a PE teacher for most of my life. I'm 60 now, hard to believe sometimes. But back then, when this story happened, I was 38, right in the middle of my career. Been teaching for about 15 years by that point. You could say I was one of those old school types, learned from the coaches who believed in discipline, hard work, structure. But I was also trying to adjust with the times. You know, new methods, new approaches, more attention to how kids felt, not just how they performed. Wasn't always easy, but hey, life's about learning, right? Even when you're the teacher. I worked in an ordinary public school, not a fancy sports academy, not some elite private place. Just your average city school, somewhere in the middle of the country. Kids from all walks of life, some natural athletes, some who'd rather be anywhere but gym class. And you learn, after a few years, how to read the room. You know when to push, when to back off, when to throw in a joke to break the tension. I always believed in running my class with energy, keep the kids moving, keep it fun but safe. And maybe, sometimes I ran it a little too loose. I liked the kids to have room to be themselves, to let out all that middle school energy. Because trust me, 7th graders, they've got plenty of it. The gym itself was nothing fancy. Old wooden floor with scuff marks from 100 games before. Tall windows that let in the winter light. The walls painted a dull beige. The sound of balls bouncing, whistles blowing, kids laughing and shouting. That was the soundtrack of my days. I loved it, to be honest. Still do. Sure, there were hard days, but there was something about watching a kid nail their first goal or finally master a skill they thought they couldn't do. That kind of thing never got old for me. It's why I stuck around so long. By that point in my career, I had a bit of a reputation. The younger kids would come in a little nervous. "Oh, you got coached today," they'd say, wide-eyed. But after a few weeks, they'd figure me out. I was fair, tough when I needed to be, sure. But I wanted them to enjoy moving, to understand their own bodies, to feel strong and confident, and honestly, to have fun. Sports aren't just about competition. They're about teamwork, resilience, joy. And man, when a gym full of kids is moving together, laughing, playing hard, that's magic. Now, of course, like any job, there's a rhythm to it. You've got the seasons, the calendar. And when winter break's coming up, oh boy, you can feel it in the air. Kids buzzing, counting down the days. Teachers too, if I'm honest. You let the kids have a little more fun that week. A game instead of drills, a bit of music on in the background. It's supposed to be the easy week. No one expects anything big to happen. But as you're about to hear, sometimes that's exactly when it does. So there I was, standing at midcourt, waiting for the last bell to ring. It was a chilly December afternoon. You could see your breath inside the gym, and the fluorescent lights gave everything a slightly surreal glow. The windows up high were frosted around the edges, but you could still make out the gray sky and the hint of snow drifting down outside. Inside, though, it felt like summer camp. Kids buzzing with energy, jerseys half-tucked, shoes squeaking, balls thumping off the walls. I glanced around at the faces I'd come to know over the semester. Jenna, with her unstoppable grin and turbo-speed reflexes. Marcus, lanky and thoughtful, always waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sophia and Luis, the inseparable duo who argued over every play but somehow always ended up on the same side. And then there was Jason, the kid who'd end up teaching me more than I ever taught him. We'd already divided into teams and started passing the ball around. The usual warm-up stuff. Keep it close, I called out. Eyes on the ball. Communicate. But you know, 7th graders, they hear what they want, especially when they know winter break is just hours away. I blew my whistle and set the teams. Blue versus red. Captains picked by popularity rather than skill. One of those fun choices I thought would make the class more relaxed. And, oh boy, did it. The second the whistle blew for real, chaos erupted. Red team charged forward like a pack of wild dogs. Blue team scattered, some sprinting, others just standing there laughing. I sprinted too, more to keep the pace than to join the game, except the day my pace was a little too casual. From the sidelines, I watched Jason, quiet Jason with the messy brown hair, carefully dribble the ball down the court. He wasn't the loudest kid, never the first to volunteer for drills, but he was precise, his movements deliberate, eyes scanning, calculating. He'd always been that way in PE, methodical and cautious. I'd admired that in him, though sometimes I wondered if he'd ever let loose. But right then, as he guided that ball forward, I saw something change in his expression, a flicker of determination, almost like I'd never seen before. Just as I was about to call out to him, "Watch your spacing, Jason," the ball got knocked away by Marcus, and Jason tumbled forward, chest first, right into the path of the ball. There was a split-second pause, like everything slowed down, the ball bouncing off his chest, his eyes widening, his hands flailing. He staggered back, hand clutching at his throat. My heart sank. You could tell immediately something was wrong. It wasn't just the wind knocked out of you, it was worse. He dropped to one knee, gasping, face turning red, then pale. I blew the whistle so hard it nearly cracked. "Everyone, stop," I screamed, sprinting over with that old-school urgency I'd taught myself years ago. Other kids froze, some wide-eyed, some frozen mid-kick, others screaming his name. Jenna crouched beside him, pressing on his back, clearly trying to help. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. In that moment, the noise in the gym shut off. All I could hear was Jason's ragged breathing, the rustle of his jersey, and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. That was the trigger, the moment everything shifted. 1 second, it was just another game. The next, it became a fight for his life, and I realized how quickly a routine class could turn dangerous if you didn't stay sharp. The faces of the kids around us, panic, fear, confusion, etched themselves into my memory. And me? I was the one who'd let my guard down. That day began as any other, but it was about to teach me more than any coaching seminar ever did. It was about to remind me that safety isn't negotiable, that respect for the game means respect for every heartbeat in the room, and that sometimes the quietest student holds the loudest lesson. All right, stick around, because what happened next, well, it's the part one still can't fully explain without getting goosebumps all over again. Man, in that moment, everything started spiraling out of control. 1 second, I was sprinting across the court, shouting for everyone to back off, and the next I was crouched beside Jason, my heart hammering so loud I could hardly think straight. He was still clutching his throat, eyes locked on mine like he was pleading. I slapped his back a couple of times, light taps, then harder, but nothing helped. No rattling cough, no sign that the blockage was clearing. My breath caught. I remember looking up and seeing the other kids frozen in place, some huddled together, whispering frantic questions. Jenna was leaning over him, face pale, hands trembling. Marcus, who just knocked the ball, had shoved his hands in his pockets, wide-eyed like he'd seen a ghost. A few kids started crying, which just added to the chaos. You know that sound, kids crying, and it rips right through you. My mind raced. Okay, stay calm. Get him help. But damn, it wasn't that simple. There was no school nurse in the gym. The nearest office was down the hall, at least 100 yards, and even if someone ran for help, by the time they got back, I could lose him. My first instinct was to try the Heimlich maneuver. I'd been trained years ago, but I hadn't had to use it in real life. My hands shook as I wrapped my arms around his ribs, just below the sternum, and gave a quick thrust. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. Panic started to knot in my chest. Jason, hang in there, buddy, I said, voice trembling but loud enough so he could hear me. Help is coming, I promise. But inside, I felt like an idiot, like I'd let him down when it mattered most. The whistle was still clenched in my back pocket. I probably should have blown it again to clear the room, but even that action felt distant. Everything felt distant except the sound of his rasping breath and the weight of time slipping away. Then came the dilemma that every coach dreads. Do I keep trying here and hope one of these thrusts dislodges the blockage? Or do I sprint for that office, get the AED, the nurse, someone with real medical gear? I glanced over at the equipment cabinet. Locked, of course, and the key was in the main office. I bit my lip. My training said immediate care on the spot was critical. But what if I wasn't doing it right? What if I made it worse? In that split second, I saw Jason's face flush red, then pale, then red again, like a warning light blinking. My palms were slick with sweat, and my shirt felt like it was glued to my back. I half lifted him, trying to brace his shoulders, and someone yelled, "Mr. Thompson, don't lose him." That was Mrs. Alvarez, the art teacher, who must have run in after hearing the whistle. She was pointing toward the office. I looked back at Jason and saw his lips turning bluish, his eyes beginning to roll. That was the breaking point. I made the call. Stay with him. I bellowed at Mrs. Alvarez and Jenna. I'm getting help. I dropped to one knee, gave Jason one last, desperate thrust, and then scrambled to my feet and tore out of the gym. My legs pumped like pistons, each step echoing down the hallway. I could hear my own voice in my head. Hurry, damn it, hurry. But as I burst into the office, I realized how thin the line was between order and chaos. One wrong decision, trying to rescue him on my own when I should have called for paramedics, could have cost Jason his life. And in that flash, I understood the real dilemma every teacher faces. You're responsible for every kid in that room, but you're only human. You can't do everything perfectly, and when something goes wrong, the choices you make in those critical seconds define everything that follows. And let me tell you, that was the longest sprint of my life. Man, that moment was like standing on the edge of a cliff, wind whipping at your knees, and you know you either have to jump or step back, and there's no turning back. I'll never forget that day. I burst into the office, heart hammering, eyes stinging from sweat, and yanked open the cabinet to grab the AED case and the medical kit. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the scissors and gauze. I remember mouthing a silent prayer. Please let me remember what to do, and thinking, to be honest, I'm no paramedic, but right now I have to be. Back in the gym, it felt like someone had turned down the world's volume until all I could hear was my own breathing. Jason lay on the floor, limp and pale, with Mrs. Alvarez kneeling beside him, her face wet with tears. Jenna was beside her, hands pressed against his back, just like I'd taught her when demonstrating the maneuver. That scene, it was both terrifying and beautiful. These kids, normally running circles around each other, had somehow grounded themselves in the worst possible moment and were trying to help. I dropped to my knees beside Jason, tore open his shirt, and saw how his chest barely moved, just a tiny hitch now and then. It was the pit in my stomach I'll never forget. Time slowed as I positioned the AED pads, my fingers fumbling with the adhesive until it stuck. I pressed the power button, and the machine's calm voice said, "Analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient." I froze, sweat dripping into my eyes. I could practically feel Jason's life hanging on the machine's next instruction. A voice crackled through the AED. "Shock advised. Might get twisted." "Delivering shock," it said, and I hit the button. A shock pulsed through the air, and nothing. No gasp, no movement. My throat felt dry. Then I remembered the training, CPR now. I locked my elbows, tilted his head back, and began compressions, 30 hard pumps, then 2 breaths. 30 in 2, over and over. I could hear Mrs. Alvarez encouraging me, "Keep going, Matt," and Jenna counting out loud, 1, 2, 3. Their voices were a lifeline. After the 3rd cycle, I saw his lips twitch. My heart lurched. Could it be? "Come on, buddy," I whispered, pressing down again. On the 4th breath, his chest rose, and he coughed, loud, rattling like something waking from a deep sleep. Jenna hoped, Mrs. Alvarez gasped, and I let out a roar that probably echoed down the hall. It was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard, life returning. Medics arrived seconds later, though in my mind it felt like hours, and took over, checking his vitals, hooking up monitors. I stepped back, hands on my knees, breathing like I'd run a marathon. Jason was blinking up at them, coughing, then looking around, confused. He looked at me, eyes wide, and managed a weak grin. "Coach, you okay?" he croaked. I laughed. Honestly, I laughed through tears and said, "I've been better, but thanks for worrying about me." That line, it was half joke, half relief. Watching him get strapped onto the gurney, I felt a weight lift off my chest, replaced by pride and gratitude. That moment taught me more about responsibility than any certification ever could. It taught me that teaching a kid to stay safe isn't enough. You have to be ready to jump into action yourself. And it taught me that even when the plan falls apart, you can find strength in the unexpected, in the quiet kid who taught me to never underestimate preparation, and in the teammates who rallied around him. As they wheeled Jason out, Mrs. Alvarez patted my shoulder and said, "You did good." Man, my chest swelled with emotion, relief, pride, humility. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. So that was the climax. Chaos, fear, a fight against time, and a victory because we refused to give up. It was the moment I realized that PE class isn't just about games, it's about life. And trust me, if you ever think you've got everything under control, remember this. The next big lesson could come when you least expect it. By the next morning, the gym felt different, quieter, almost reverent. I showed up early, half expecting to find the floors still taped off and paramedics' footprints everywhere. Instead, I found janitors sweeping up the stray cones, the squeak of their mops echoing off those same scuffed wooden boards. The principal popped her head in, gave me a nod of encouragement, and whispered, "Jason's okay. He's going to make a full recovery." I remember my chest unclenching in that moment, like a knot finally coming undone. I spent the rest of that day in a haze of follow-ups and paperwork, incident reports, phone calls home, answering questions from nervous parents. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt until I heard Jason's mom on the line, her voice thick with gratitude, saying, "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You saved his life." I still get goosebumps thinking about her words. All those years training, all those drills. I'd never felt the weight of teaching until I realized I'd truly made a difference in a moment of crisis. A couple of days later, Jason walked back into my class looking a bit pale, but with that quiet spark in his eyes. The first thing he did was grin and give me a thumbs up from across the gym. "Hey, coach," he said, voice hoarse, "guess I you a rematch." Laughter rippled through the room. Jenna elbowed him lightly, Marcus smiled sheepishly, and I couldn't help but chuckle too. That break in tension was exactly what we all needed. It was like the storm had passed, and now we could appreciate the calm. Over the next week, the school board rolled out new safety protocols, more frequent first aid drills for staff, an accessible medical kit right in the gym, and clear emergency response posters on the walls. I worked side by side with Mrs. Alvarez and Coach Rivera from the high school program, revamping our lesson plans to build in safety check-ins before every activity. It felt good to turn a terrible scare into a lasting change. But beyond policies and posters, the real resolution happened in small moments. Jason, once reserved, started volunteering to lead warm-ups, carefully demonstrating chest passes and reminding his classmates to tuck their elbows in. Jenna, who'd been terrified at first, signed up for the peer mentor program to learn CPR alongside me. Marcus, after apologizing a dozen times, surprised us all by helping me organize his safety shout-out board where kids posted tips like "watch your partner" or "stay aware of your space." Parents began dropping notes in my mailbox. "Thank you for recalling the heart-pumping moment and turning it into a teachable one," one mother wrote. Another dad brought over a box of donuts for the team, joking, "We need your energy back in the stands." It was clear the whole school community had rallied, not just around Jason's recovery, but around a renewed commitment to looking out for one another. For me, personally, that incident reshaped how I saw my role. I was more than a coach or a game organizer. I was a guardian of those kids' well-being. Ever since, I make it a point to start every class with a quick safety check and a reminder that every teammate counts. And whenever I pass by Jason in the hallway, he gives me that same quiet nod, like we share a secret handshake, one forged in a moment of true crisis and mutual trust. So that's how it all resolved, with relief, gratitude, and a host of small, meaningful changes that outlasted one freak accident. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real, and honestly, it was exactly the kind of finish I wanted. Because in this job, the greatest victories aren't trophies or wins on a scoreboard. They're the ones where everyone walks away safe, stronger, and a little wiser than before. I'll be honest, after everything's settled, I felt this strange mix of relief and restlessness. Relief because Jason was okay, because I did what I could in those critical minutes. But restlessness because I kept replaying every detail in my head. Could I have acted faster? Could I have trained better? That week after the incident, I found myself lying awake at night, jotting down notes in a little notebook, ideas for drills, checklists for equipment, reminders about communication. It became almost a ritual. Coffee at dawn, then a half hour of planning new safety routines before my family woke up. Emotionally, I swung between pride and humility. Pride in knowing I'd stepped up when it mattered. Humility in recognizing how unprepared I'd been for that single, freak moment. It made me realize that no matter how many years you've taught, there's always room to learn more. I still remember the first day back in my classes after the scare. I greeted the kids at the door, not with the usual high five, but with a quick safety huddle, just 30 seconds to check shoes, clear the space, remind everyone that we watch out for each other. The students looked at me curiously at first, but soon they were leading it themselves, calling out "laces tied" or "floor clear," like it was second nature. Personally, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This job isn't just running laps or teaching drills, it's about creating an environment where every kid knows they matter and that their safety is our top priority. I started volunteering for extra first aid training sessions, dragging along any teacher who'd listen. I organized a monthly safety spotlight emailed to the staff, sharing tips, success stories, even a quick quiz. Some colleagues rolled their eyes at first, typical school humor, but by the third month, people were emailing me resources they'd found and asking to present at our in-service day. And then there was Jason. He stopped by my classroom one afternoon with a homemade card, just a simple drawing of a soccer ball and the words, "Thank you for saving me." I think the card is still taped to my desk. It reminds me daily why I do what I do. That whole experience reshaped my perspective on teaching P. It's not just about the game. It's about trust, responsibility, and being ready to act when life throws you a curveball. So yeah, the aftertaste was a blend of excitement to improve and a sober reminder of how fragile things can be. But above all, I felt inspired, ready to make every class safer, every lesson more meaningful, and every student a little more confident in knowing someone's got their back. You know, if there's one thing I walked away with from that day, it's this. Preparation isn't just about drills and equipment, it's a mindset. I used to think that having the right gear in the cabinet and a checklist on the wall was enough. But what really matters is cultivating constant vigilance, humility, and a willingness to learn alongside your students. I learned that a good PE teacher isn't defined by flawless technique or perfect game plans, but by compassion under pressure and the courage to act when every second counts. To be honest, I've always loved sports for the energy and camaraderie, but that incident taught me the deeper purpose behind every warm-up and scrimmage. It's about forging trust, showing my students that I take their safety as seriously as I take their progress. It's about admitting that I don't have all the answers and that asking for help, whether from a fellow teacher, a coach, or the school nurse, is a sign of strength, not weakness. I still get goosebumps thinking about the moment Jenna and Mrs. Alvarez jumped in to help, and how Jason, once so quiet, became an advocate for safety himself. Their actions reminded me that leadership can come from any corner of the room, and that real learning happens when we all step up together. Now, every time I teach a drill, I pause to remind the kids, trust your teammates, trust yourself, and trust that we've got each other's backs. So the takeaway? Don't wait for a crisis to shine a light on your blind spots. Embrace preparation as a living practice, review your routines, invite feedback, and stay ready to pivot when the unexpected happens. That's the lesson I carry with me every day, and it's one I hope every coach, teacher, and parent keeps close to heart. Because in the end, it's not the wins on the scoreboard that define us, but the moments we rise to protect one another when it truly matters. Ever since that day, the story of our indoor miracle has become something of a legend around the school. Teachers in the lounge still bring it up, usually when someone mentions drills or safety checks, and they'll say, "Remember what happened with Jason? Yeah, that one really woke us up." I've been asked to speak at district trainings, to share what went down and how we turned a near tragedy into a teachable moment. It's odd to be known for a crisis, but if it helps other schools avoid the same scare, I'll gladly relive it a dozen times. I haven't faced anything quite like that again. Instead, I've invested my energy into prevention. Every semester now, I run a safety under fire workshop for my colleagues, complete with real-life scenarios and role-playing exercises. The turnout grows every year, and I can see the relief on everyone's faces when they realize, hey, I know what to do if that ever happens in my gym. On the student side, Jason's recovery sparked its own ripple effect. He went on to join the high school first responder club and eventually became a volunteer EMT in our town. Last I heard, he was saving lives every weekend, wearing the same wide smile he had in my class. It's surreal to think that the kid I helped save would go on to save others. His classmates talk about him like he's a superhero, but really, he's just a reminder that courage and preparation can come from the most unexpected places. For me personally, the incident reshaped my entire approach to teaching. I still love an impromptu scrimmage as much as ever, but now every whistle blow is preceded by a quick safety check, not because I'm paranoid, but because I've seen how quickly things can flip. I model that behavior for my students, tying laces, checking space, scanning for potential hazards. And because I lead by example, they've internalized that mindset too. It's become part of our culture, an unspoken rule that we look out for each other on and off the court. Professional recognition followed, an award for excellence in school safety, invitations to write for educational blogs, and even a brief feature in the local paper. But none of that compares to the small daily victories. Seeing a 7th grader pause before a drill to say, "Coach, your laces are untied," or hearing a former student tell me that because of our class, they felt confident calling 911 when their neighbor collapsed last month. That's what matters, knowing that a split-second decision in a crowded gym decades ago continues to save lives and shape futures. So here we are at the end of this journey, and I've got one final thought for you. Teaching P isn't just about drills, scores, or even winning games. It's about being ready to step up when the unthinkable happens, and trusting that every person in your class has the power to change your life. I've spent years breaking a sweat alongside these kids, cheering on goals and high fives, but nothing compares to the lesson I learned that day when Jason nearly lost his breath, because it taught me that safety, care, and preparedness aren't extras in education. They're at the heart of everything we do. Every time I blow that whistle now, there's a little reminder in my mind. One moment of distraction can cost a life, but one moment of action can save one. And the craziest part? Sometimes it's the quietest person in the room who has the loudest impact. So here's my question to you, and I promise it's a bit uncomfortable. Have you ever been in a position where someone you least expected turned out to be your greatest teacher? And if that happened again tomorrow, Would you recognize it, or would you let the chance slip by? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm curious, when the tables turn, who will be the one to teach you?